Part 1. The Shinra Electric Power Company. Rufus Shinra is heir of the Shinra Electric Power Company, and by heir, I mean he is the vice president most likely to succeed his father. To talk about Rufus, we have to talk a bit about Shinra itself and the structures behind it, something that will come up again in future videos. The ideals behind the company are sound. They are, at its core, about wanting to make the world a better place. They wish to provide the world with a new energy source, and from those standards enhance the lives of all people with technology. That being said, the story of FF7 is indeed a cautionary tale of letting industry run free without checks and balances. In a phrase, uncontrolled capitalism. As we can see during Remake during the Shinra propaganda tour, there is indeed an actual desire to improve the lives of others, but that comes at a heavy price. The Mako system that runs the company and supplies the power for all these miracles is, of course, coming at the cost of the planet. This is also something the company clearly knows, though I'd be willing to say that in the early days, they may have honestly thought they had found a perpetual energy source. It clearly mirrors the thoughts of oil reserves when petroleum was first used in our own history. Many thought it was a natural byproduct of the planet, and thus a renewable resource. We all know the truth of that now. Regardless of the early theories of Mako in this fictional world, it is clear now that the extraction of Mako from the planet is anything but limitless. It is shown in Rebirth that some attempts to mitigate this have been put in place. For example, the reactors the Gold Saucer uses are meant to fluctuate from location to location and allow the area to recover, at least a little. Even still, the Golden Saucer is using a staggering amount of Mako, something that Barrett is quick to point out.
Can you believe this shit? This is what the planet's dying for? This is why we're bleeding her dry? Look at it. Look. All of it. Mako. Siphoned straight from the life stream. From her veins.
So, how much of the burden is on Rufus and his father? Honestly, a whole lot, because they are fully aware of the problem. President Shinra, who I was unable to find a canonical first name for in my research, basically seems okay with bleeding the planet dry to build his wonders, all in the name of Shinra. He clearly realizes that this is unsustainable, and in the typical capitalist fashion, simply doesn't care as he will not have to suffer the consequences in his lifetime. Rufus is a different matter. First, it is worth pointing out that he is fully aware of the sins of the company. He knows the folly of Mako, he sees the devastation it has brought, and he is aware of the lives ruined by it. In fact, while unconfirmed, Rebirth hints strongly that Rufus knows the origins of Viceroy Saruf, or may even be the man himself. Regardless, from the conquest of Wutai and Jun'on to reactors failing catastrophically, Rufus is fully aware and even played a hand in it. And so the question is he really any different from his father? I think he is, at least enough to consider a few things. So let's get into that. Part 2. Youthful Optimism. The views of Mako use between the elderly and youth of the planet are different. We can see this firsthand in Rebirth, as there is an interesting scene between Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, and Geisel Bugenhagen at Cosmo Canyon.
Okay, but does it actually fade away? I mean, what if it doesn't? What if it just returns to the life stream in a different form? Is that possible?
A novel theory, suggestive of a lack of understanding. Got a question. Planet runs out of energy. It and everything on it dies. There any way to avoid this? Like, making the spiritual energy stronger?
Why are you asking me such things? I'm sorry. I've come to realize that I'm somewhat stuck in the past.
Cloud and Tifa, both members of Avalanche, question if the planet is running out of energy. They question if there are ways to extend what is there, presumably to lessen the environmental impact of energy extraction. This is very telling because they can see the benefits of Mako throughout the world. We are talking about a lot of good things like hospitals, medical research, and stability for civilization. It is pointed out more than a few times that there are good people working for Shinra, that they are innocent and simply living their lives in the new world. In short, Cloud and Tifa have grown up in a world where Mako is normal and has made the lives of people better. It isn't too hard to imagine Rufus, who is around their same age, has similar views. That isn't to say that he intends to make things better. He makes it very clear that he intends to continue with Shinra's supremacy of the world, but isn't immediately interested in further conquest. Perhaps to him, the conquest of the world is already complete, at least enough that they don't need to spread out more. But while he did choose to fire the sister ray cannon during his coronation, his goal wasn't a declaration of war, but a show of strength. Let's also not forget that in this timeline, Rufus is being baited into action by a version of Glenn Brock, a puppet of Sephiroth and Genova. Perhaps Rufus was foolish for firing the sister ray. Clearly, members of his inner circle think so. Inner conflicts of Shinra aside, it would seem that his immediate goals are actually about trying to solve the energy crisis, and that is why he is so interested in the Promised Land. See, Rufus sees the decay of the planet, and presumably he wants to ensure its longevity. His father wasn't worried about those consequences. He was old and wouldn't live to see the decay he was causing. Rufus, however, is a young man who will have to live with that outcome. It is, therefore, in his best interest to try and solve the problem and preserve the planet. I am choosing to think he is a step above his father here, because while Shinra Sr. intended to build a new Midgar while abandoning the world, Rufus may be more interested in fixing the world's energy crisis. As such, I believe that the deal he offered to Cloud was legitimate, that he really would have gone along with it if it meant that Sephiroth was removed as a threat. His real goal is to let Aerith run loose because he honestly believes she will lead them to the mythical location. The question is, if she actually did this, what would Rufus do with it? Part 3. The Promised Land. The stories say that the Cetra disappeared and went to this mythical land filled with Mako. Rufus believes if they can find this land and tap into it, that it will give them the endless supply of power they are looking for, and thus the Shinra Empire would rule forever, imposing its order on the world. And let's be clear, it is indeed imposing its order on the world, from conquering nations with military might, to building dangerous untested technology close to people who do not want it, and actively tricking others into going along with its use. In Rebirth, Aerith brings up a very interesting point when confronting Dio for possession of the keystone to the Temple of the Ancients.
Point of order, my ancestors owned it. Don't you think that makes me its rightful owner?
A Cetra, are you? That, my dear, is a bold claim. But still, who am I to dispute your heritage? You may, of course, have the keystone. That is, on one condition.
She is, as far as anybody is aware, the sole survivor of the Cetra. Her mother was abducted and experimented on until she died, and Aerith was raised in captivity in Midgar, constantly watched and monitored. Aerith and her mother's birthright were stolen from them, and now Shinra wants to go a step further and pillage their sacred sites, all in the name of harvesting a natural resource for the sake of the Shinra Electric Power Company. That is Rufus Shinra's goal in this. Let's also not forget that this isn't the first time that Shinra has attempted to pillage the Cetra heritage. They believed that Genova was a Cetra, and with the use of her cells, created a man who they believed was half Cetra. I of course speak of Sephiroth, a man who went crazy and believes it is his birthright to destroy the planet and absorb all its energy with his mother. The full scope of Sephiroth's plan are clearly not known to Rufus, but what is clear is that there is a Sephiroth running around causing problems. After all, Director Palmer saw him firsthand in Remake. Rufus is aware there is a Sephiroth problem, and so again, his offer to Cloud and Avalanche seemed legitimate. Take care of Sephiroth and stay out of Shinra's way, and in return, Shinra wouldn't bother them. There are of course deeper aspects to the Promised Land. Shinra, and by extension Rufus, are fully aware of the lifestream and its relation to Mako. They have seen firsthand how the reactors drain the land, leaving a withered, rocky, desolate wasteland in its place. Midgar is a shining example of the desecration of the land. Even if Rufus takes a personal stance that the legend of the Cetra are simply legends and fairy tales, there is more than enough evidence to show that the stories of the lifestream have truth in them. That brings us to, at last, my thoughts of the man himself. Part 4. Rufus Shinra. I've spent a lot of time talking about the company Rufus inherits, but what about the man himself? Is he a guy who sees the evil of his father's company and actively wishes to change it? Or is he just another power-crazed tycoon on the board of directors, putting his own ambition front and center? It's a little of both, I'm afraid. Let's start with the good points, which is that in Rebirth, he calls out that board of directors for not standing up to his father's insane plans.
Why is it that none of you even tried to stop him? Shinra must change. We must break new ground, grow stronger, smarter, observe, adapt, expand, control.
He is right to do so. They are all complicit with the Sector 7 tragedy, including the best of them, Reeve 2SD. I'm not going into Reeves here though. He is getting an episode of this show all to himself, so stay tuned for that. I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention that in Advent Children and Dirge of Cerberus, Rufus had learned from the events of the original game and chose to help those in support of the planet. It's too little too late if you ask me, but worth bringing up. Instead, there is something else to consider. His smug sense of superiority in the face of the tragedy and problems his company has brought to the world. He sees himself as untouchable, sees Shinra as his property, served as its vice president, and has committed atrocities in its name. Do not be fooled by his cool looks and stylish combat style, or that Rufus is capable of doing good if he really wanted. Rufus Shinra is not a good person. His fighting style really enunciates this too. He is a practitioner of Aikido, a traditional defensive martial art in our real world. For those of you unaware, it is a martial art focused around redirecting your opponent's energy and using it against them. In this case, he mixed it with gunplay, perhaps a bit similar to what we see in the movie Equilibrium. In combat, he can really catch you off guard because you have to play by his rules if you want to win, and thus it follows his mindset very well. Rufus, even when losing, remains in charge. His combat style, in particular, his use of guns to aid in mobility, also show his innovative stance of incorporating technology into his fighting skill. And of course, I need to bring up how he has his faithful dog with him, Darkstar, who gives him support. Ultimately though, his biggest weakness is simply that he cannot compete with the likes of Soldier. He is simply a human. A skilled human, but a human with no Mako infusions. Nonetheless, he is incredibly proud of his martial training, believing himself to be above the need of the Turks as a personal guard. Furthermore, Rufus Shinra is arrogant. While he playfully jives at Cloud about owning him in Remake, it is a statement that still reveals his mindset. He sees himself as the owner of Shinra, of all its employees, of all its technology, and likely in time, even the entire world. I will say it again. Rufus Shinra is not a good person. If only Yuffie had been a little better at her assassination attempt, or Cloud had been a little more dedicated to taking out the trash, I think the world would have ended up a much better place, don't you?
I could end this, here and now.
No, not quite. Tonight marks a new beginning. For Shinra!
Part 5. The Verdict. It is hard to say if Rufus will become a better person in the third game. Looking at the original game in the third act, he actually doubled down on his goals and plans to execute Avalanche publicly to appease the masses. He basically thinks he has it all figured out, thinks he can handle all the problems with his technology and power, and it is his overconfidence that leads to his apparent death. Of course, he survived that and appears in Advent Children, where he is a little better of a person. He's still a smug schemer, but he at least seems willing to accept that Shinra is wrong. More important is that this shows he isn't above changing, that he could be a better person. That being said, I'm not judging a future Rufus of a game not even announced yet, but rather focusing on the character we know at this moment in time. It is for that reason I am judging him as irredeemable, but with a caveat. When the third game is out, I will revisit him and his complete arc, and consider a change based on his behaviors there. Until then, let us adjourn. Thanks for watching the video. This is just the first of the Shinra villains I'm going to be dragging on this program, and yes, that includes Reeve aka Kate Sith. If you are interested in my analysis of them, then make sure you are subscribed to the channel. If you would like to get that video early, or just want to help out the channel in general, then head over to Patreon to join the community, or join here on YouTube as a channel member. As I said, you'll gain access to videos a little early, gain access to the Discord so we can talk more directly about whatever you want, and have your name at the bottom with these fine people down here. Things continue to be rough lately, and sadly, I have some health issues making things even tougher right now, so if you can throw some goodwill my way, it would help out. A lot. That's all I have for you today. Be safe, and I'll see you next time.